Hi folks, how are you doing? It's been a lot of fun having you in my class so far and hope you're enjoying our lessons together. Now today we're going to talk about working with Excel data. Specifically, what about it? Well, first of all, we'll talk about freezing panes and I'll explain what I mean in just a couple minutes. We'll also talk about cleaning, sorting, and counting data. And so some of the basic survival skills when you start working with data. Pretty cool stuff. So let's get started. Now, first of all, I'd encourage you to follow along using your own data. And so what you want to do is download and open your dataset. And what I'd encourage you to do is to actually save another copy of your dataset to work in. And so I might go to File, and then Save As, and then save another version of your dataset. And so I've put in the suggested name for your file, which is to just add cleaned to your dataset name. In general, it's a good idea to save a new copy of your dataset before working on it so that you can always go back to the original and look at the original data if you need to, because accidents happen, right? And so if you mess up the original file, then your original data is lost. And so go ahead and make another copy. And I'll show you how to do that in Excel. So let's revisit Excel. So this is my dataset, and it is fake data, even though you may find that this looks very similar to your own. And so just as a caveat that what you're seeing in front of you is not your own dataset. Now, let's say that I wanted to save another copy, then one of the easiest ways to do that would be to go to File and then go to Save As. And so I'm going to do that and save it as a clean copy that I can work off from.
A few moments later.
And so I've gone through that, and now I have a dataset that is called Psych300 Data 1 Demo Cleaned. And so here we are. Now, some of the things that I'm often tempted to do is to just look at what's going on here. And so I might double click on these areas in between columns to expand them. Another thing you can do if you have cells that have longer text and you want Excel to just adjust the height of your cells for you and whatnot, you can also click on Wrap Text. Now, in this instance, it's just all one word for the variable name, so it doesn't look as pretty. But if you have multiple words and want Excel to adjust the row height for you, then wrap text is another option to go, just FYI. In my case, I probably would prefer not the wrap text, but instead just expand the columns because it's just all single words, and it makes it a little bit easier to read the cells over here. And so these are the names of the variables. Another thing that I would do is that freezing panes that I just talked about. Now, in order to do that, you would go to View, and then go to Freeze Panes over here. Now, what does that do? Now, let me show you first. And so I'm trying to make sure to freeze the top row because that is where the variable names are. And so let me click on it and then talk a little bit more about it. Okay, and so now Excel has frozen the top row, which means that you could scroll down, but that row will not disappear, which can make it really handy if you need to scroll down towards the bottom of your dataset or lower on your dataset, and you want the variable names to stay within view. And that's pretty handy because if you didn't do that, so let's say that I unfroze this again, then the first row would disappear, and so you can't see the variable names anymore. And so oftentimes I will have variable names or column headings here, and so I will go to Freeze Panes and then freeze the top row. That's a pretty handy tool. And so now for some notes in PowerPoint. Let's move on over there again. Welcome back. And so now that we've talked about freezing panes, let's talk about cleaning our data. What does that mean? Now, something you want to keep in mind is that when you get a data set, you always want to lay your eyes on it and check it, because there will probably be some unusual data points or things you want to fix or clean about your data set. For example, maybe you will get unusual values or entries. And so, for example, we collected survey data, but there's no guarantee that depending on the item type, the respondent would have interpreted the item or the question the same way across the board. So one of the examples I can think of is if I ask you, what is the occupation you're most interested in? One person might say, I want to become a licensed mental health therapist. Another person might say, I want to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. Another person might say, I want to become a therapist. And they might all mean a pretty similar profession, and I might want to group them together into one value, in which case I want to recode those entries so that they indicate roughly the same idea, because not everybody will respond to those types of items exactly the same way. Another thing that often happens is that you get responses that need to be recoded. And so, for example, if you administered an item that had a Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree on a 1 to 5 scale, and you got the data in such a way that what you're seeing as values for variables are these, and you want to convert them to numeric variable ranging from 1 to 5, then you would need to recode your data so that they're numeric. Another type of issue you will often encounter is missing data, and so people may have skipped the item, they might have seen a multiple answer item and decided not to click certain options. Oftentimes, researchers will use missing data indicator, and so for example, they might use a value that would never exist in the real data. For example, -99 or -999 is often commonly used to indicate missing data, just so that they know that that is not just blank by accident, but that is actually missing data. And so it's not uncommon for researchers to come up with their own rule for handling and indicating missing data. And we're going to be working with missing data in our data set as well. And so cleaning means fixing all sorts of different issues in your data set so that they can be analyzed. And it's a very, very, very important part of getting your analysis started. So I would encourage you to take a look at the data set right now, perhaps hit the pause button on your video and think about what variables you want to fix. And I'm gonna do the same, and let's reconvene in Excel. See you there. Okay, so here we are in our trusty dataset, and if I scroll up and down and just kind of think about the values that exist in these variables and their ranges that I'm seeing, in general they look alright, but there is a rather glaring issue that you're probably seeing right now, which is this stuff, the null. That's what happens if I download data from Qualtrics in SPSS format, and then I actually merge the data sets between pre-test and post-test, score the data, and then downloaded that as Excel. And null here really indicates missing data. Now, something that we're going to face when we get to R is that we're going to want this to be a missing value that's either numeric or blank. And so we're going to actually just make them blank. Now, how do we do this? Now, a good place to go would be Home, and then go to Find and Select, and then go to Replace. Now, just to make sure that everything goes correctly, I might just copy this to my clipboard so that I can go to Replace, and then tell Excel, find this, and replace it with nothing. And I think that would work out okay for the R data analyses. And then you can hit replace all when you're ready. Now this is kind of a big commitment though, so this is going to replace all of the values of null in the entire sheet. And so try it on your spreadsheet and see how it goes, but be prepared to either undo the changes if it doesn't go well, or be prepared to revert back to another copy of the original data set. And so it's kind of a big commitment, but here goes. A moment of truth. And so Excel says all done. We made 8 replacements. I thought there were actually more than that, but let's scroll up and down. And so we no longer see that null anymore. And so they're replaced by blank values. And right now it's my belief that that will be handled okay with RStudio or R. And so that is okay. And so without further ado, it's your turn to go ahead and clean your own data. And so whatever your copy of this data set might be, go ahead and follow the same procedures that you've seen in lecture, including creating a copy of your own data set to work with if you haven't done so already. And then try cleaning the missing values the way I did, which is to replace them with a blank. And actually, let me meet you in the next video so that you don't have to sit through a long video. And so I'll talk to you in the next video. And in the meantime, enjoy cleaning your data. See you soon.